Let's begin with a chant. This is Pole Star. I have made thee pole star of my life. And let's chant this first and foremost with sincerity of heart, that it's easy to chant subconsciously sometimes or without conscious attention. But let's take this with deep sincerity, pledging in this moment that we will use God as the pole star of our life, guiding us in every decision, in every feeling, in every thought. And let's visualize our Guru at the spiritual eye and sing this song to him. I have made thee pole star of my life. I have made thee pole star of my life. Though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, still I see the path through thy mercy. Still I see the path through thy mercy. I have made thee pole star of my life. I have made thee pole star of my life. Though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, still I see the path through thy mercy. Still I see the path through thy mercy. I have made thee pole star of my life. I have made thee pole star of my life. Though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, still I see the path through thy mercy. Still I see the path through thy mercy. I have made thee pole star of my life. I have made thee pole star of my life. Though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, though my sea is dark and my stars are gone, still I see the path through thy mercy. Still I see the path through thy mercy. I have made thee pole star of my life. I have made thee pole star of my life. I have made thee pole star of my life. Let's pray together. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, dearest friend, beloved God, great masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, we humbly bow before you all. Be with us today. Fill our hearts with your song. Help us to be receptive to your divine presence. Help us to attune ourselves to your consciousness. Help us to offer ourselves ever more sincerely as your instruments in this world. Bless us that we may forget ourselves in the contemplation of your blissful presence. Om, peace. Amen. Good morning again, my friends. Today we'll be jumping into another one of our Whispers from Eternity, but this is one of Master's poems, which is more towards the end of the book. We have done, over the course of the last few weeks, the invocations to some of the gurus. We did Christ, then we did Krishna, and then we did my guru, which is somewhat specifically related to Sri Yukteswar, but also to this entire lineage of masters, and also to your individual guru. So that was sort of a multi-purpose, all-around grand slam of invoking the guru's grace. But then I thought it would be really fun to do God's Boatman, because this poem, for me, very clearly invokes Yogananda's presence and his consciousness and his dedication to all of us, his disciples, and to all the world. And it's a wonderful prayer to tune into. I was realizing the other day, actually just yesterday, as a matter of fact, that Swami Kriyananda said beautifully in a talk, that it's videoed of him saying this, that he said, ultimately it's your destiny, each one of our destinies, to become like Christ, to become like Buddha, to become like Yogananda. And that's our destiny. And the Guru's greatness and the Guru's power is what will draw us into becoming like him. And if we want to honor our Guru, this was the revelation I had yesterday, and it seems so obvious, but if we want to honor that fountainhead of grace, that source of inspiration and upliftment, the greatest way we can honor our Guru is to become like them in all parts of our heart, of our consciousness, of everything that we are. And so when we take this prayer, God's Boatman, it can feel perhaps a little intimidating at first because it is such an incredible depth of love. But all of us, if we really want to honor our Guru, need to make efforts to become like him. And so if we want to become like him, maybe we ought to read his eternal promise to all fellow souls and try and emulate his compassion, try to emulate his love. And I actually took this prayer, I forgot that I did this, but I actually did take this prayer for a number of months, and I found it to be very, very powerful. And the first part of the prayer is a little bit different in tone than its second, and we'll get into that in a moment. But I found that even if there were parts of the prayer that were completely beyond my present state of understanding, the yearning and the sincerity of the second half of the prayer, I could say with complete honesty in the moment. And I heard Swami Ananda say that she took this prayer for a long period of time and found over years that she could feel a deeper level of sincerity saying all of these words, that it was becoming real to her. I thought that was just incredibly inspiring. Wouldn't it be wonderful at the end of our lives to be able to read this poem not as an admiration of Yogananda's consciousness, well, that too, but also just as a complete spontaneous reflection of our own consciousness, because we too had become like him. We had become him. So, with that, I'll take a look at God's Boatman. One thing that's a little unique about this, as opposed to the other prayers we've done so far, is it's written more in poetic format. And so I'll try my best to do it some justice, and we'll talk about what I think the writing is indicating for us afterwards. So this is God's Boatman. And if you feel to, I invite you to close your eyes and center your consciousness in the heart and feel that these words are Yogananda's vibration calling to you, and that this is his eternal promise which he is making in the present moment to each one of you individually. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death, and return to earth's shores from my home in space. I want to load my boat with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind, that I may carry them to the opalescent pool of iridescent joy, there where my Father distributes his all-desire-quenching liquid peace. Oh, I will come back again and again, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering with bleeding feet. I will come, if need be, 1,000,000,000,000 times, as long as I know that one stray brother is left behind. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that all my brothers may find the way to happiness forever and forever in thee. Om. Peace. Amen. Isn't that an incredible piece of poetry? And what an incredible promise. For me, like I was mentioning, the first half of the prayer always felt like Master's promise to me, that he will come again and again with bleeding feet, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering, as long as one stray brother was left behind. And he's talking about you. He's talking about me, that he will come back over and over again, as long as one of us is left weeping. But then the second part of the prayer is a little more accessible to me, because it's hard, because it's completely beyond my current level of awareness to consciously return across the gulf after death and return to Earth's shores. That's just not really in my wheelhouse. But I can appreciate his immortal promise in the first half of the prayer. But the second half of the prayer becomes very accessible to me when he says, I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. This whole second half of the prayer, when he's asking God for God consciousness, is immediately accessible and very sincere for all of us truth seekers. And so I memorized this second part of the prayer. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. It's beautiful. And I think it's sort of a sly way of praying in the right way to get the greatest divine response. Because we could sincerely pray, I want thee, O God, and we have chants like that. I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. And that's beautiful. But when we also say, I want thee, O God, so I may share thee with all, then I'd like to think that perhaps we magnetize a little bit of extra blessings, a little bit of unwarranted grace, because we're offering ourselves as instruments for the Masters, and God needs channels. And so wherever his instruments are willing, his grace flows. And so I was just reading in Lightbearer the other day, if I remember the quote correctly, Swami Kriyananda said, you will advance more quickly the more you take responsibility for sharing inspiration with others. And that's not a direct quote, but that's, I think, the essence of it. And I thought that was incredible, because when we take responsibility for channeling God's grace into this world to other people, the instrument, as Yogananda often said, is blessed by that which flows through it. And I don't really know if it's in my cards to find God in this incarnation. It's totally beyond my awareness. But I have had glimpses where I feel like Master is channeling his grace through me. And that's pretty good. That feels pretty good. That is exciting, it's thrilling, it's so uplifting, it's purifying. And the more I experience that, the more incentive I have to pray this way. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. And one thing that pops to my mind also is we want to spark the heart's yearning for God, the devotion. Though we're not saying, dear God, it might be somewhat nice if I could experience your consciousness, but only if it's not a worry to you, or I don't mean to bother, I don't mean to impose. But he says, without any justification, I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. I want salvation, that I may give thee to all. And so this prayer is beautiful because without mincing his words, I think it really helps us to remember that essential, desireless desire. I want salvation, that I may give it to all. And if you aren't sure if that is a sincere prayer, all you have to do is calm yourself and ask your still inner awareness, what do I see in the world around me? Not what am I used to perceiving, but what is directly in front of me right now? What do I observe in the people around me? What do I see in their eyes? What do I hear in their voices? What do I feel in their hearts? And of course, you will perceive within them divinity and great beauty and great aspiration and the presence of the divine. But also, perhaps you'll perceive that deep undercurrent yearning for God and that deep soul suffering, the divine love sorrow inherent within all of us, yearning to be free. I've had moments of this where I have been overcome with compassion because I can see in the heart of my fellow man the yearning of the soul struggling to be free. And that compassion leads me to prayer because I'm completely helpless in the face of that suffering to help. I'm completely incapable of helping, but God is not. God is the source of all grace, of all upliftment. And so then when you see the suffering of mankind, the suffering of your fellow souls, it can spur you to ever deeper, more sincere prayer. I want thee, O God, that I may give thee to all. Because eventually we learn that God is the only solution. He is the only answer to all of our suffering. Free me then, O Lord, from the bondage of this body, that I may show others how they too can free themselves. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that all my brothers may find the way to happiness forever and forever in thee. This is an incredible prayer. I mean, I feel like I don't need to say anything about it. I just need to keep reading it over and over and we'll all understand it more powerfully. But saying this prayer, I think, has a powerful effect of transforming our consciousness to remember the source of happiness. I want thine everlasting happiness, but I want also to share it with others, that all my brothers may find the way to happiness forever and forever in thee. And this helps us redirect the feelings of our hearts back to infinity. And even if we're incapable of truly redirecting through pranayama, through true energy control, all of the feelings of our heart back to God alone, at least we can want to do that. At least we can say, Lord, I know that you are the source of all happiness, and you are tricking me in the guise of this outer desire. You are fooling me in the face of this thing that I am seeking. But if we do that, eventually God will reveal himself, I think, to be the underlying cause of all happiness and all fulfillment within all things. So now let's take a look at the first half of the prayer again, this sort of eternal, ever-present promise of the Master. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death. Already just that phrase, many times. I have no idea what he means by that. Yogananda said, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. How many times has he returned for us? Who knows? But it's worth contemplating. Perhaps if we're able to expand our awareness of time, we'll be a little less concerned with our petty squabbles today. I want to ply my boat many times across the gulf after death and return to earth's shores from my home in space. I want to load my boat with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind. In Autobiography of a Yogi, when Yogananda was born, again I'm paraphrasing here, but Lahiri Mahashaya told Yogananda's parents that he would be a spiritual engine that would bring, was it millions of souls to God, or did he only say many? But that's what the lives of all of these great avatars are, a spiritual engine, or in this analogy, a great boat that he wants to load with all those waiting, thirsty ones who have been left behind. In Greek mythology, when someone dies, they traverse to the realm of the dead, and before they're allowed admittance into the underworld, they have to cross the river Styx. And I don't know this to be true, but I was contemplating that perhaps that river is like the river of the spine, that we have to go inward when we die, and we have to traverse that river of the spine before we're allowed into the astral worlds. And there is a ferryman on that river Styx. And in Greek mythology, he's a little bit more intimidating than in this analogy. But in the Greek myth, you had to have a payment for him. And if you could pay the ferryman, he would load you into his boat and he would ferry you safely across the river. And so maybe our payment is attunement to the Guru. Our payment is our devotion, the coin of our own love. Not that there's any Vaishya mercantile relationship between the Guru and the disciple, but really it's just that there's no other desire that keeps us from stepping into that boat. And so at last we're free to join him, to be ferried across the river Styx, to be ferried across that gulf after death, and to his home in space. As then Yogananda says, that I may carry them to the opalescent pool of iridescent joy. There where my Father distributes his all-desire-quenching liquid peace. This is a wonderful few lines to meditate on. What would it be like to be carried to the opalescent pool of iridescent peace? What incredible words he uses. Opalescent brings to mind sparkling light, dancing gently like astral beams of iridescent joy. There where my Father distributes his all-desire-quenching liquid peace. It's interesting, it just occurred to me when I read this last night, it's interesting that Yogananda refers to God as the Father in this, perhaps because it's saying that we were taken beyond all creation, that the Mother is God within creation, but the Father is God independent of creation, beyond all creation. And so he's talking about wanting to take us to perfect liberation, to union with the Father, beyond all duality. And there where we may drink from his all-desire-quenching liquid peace. Oh, I will come back again and again, crossing 1,000,000 crags of suffering. With bleeding feet I will come, if need be 1,000,000,000,000 times, as long as I know that one stray brother is left behind. You ought to read this section of this prayer if you ever feel discouraged, if you ever feel alone, if you ever feel that the divine does not love you. Read this prayer. This poem will give you hope, will give you courage, will give you faith that God will never abandon you. It's like that beautiful story, or the beautiful allegory of a man when he dies and he's going to heaven and he looks back on his life and he sees his life as walking on the beach, and he sees his footprints in the sand traversing all experiences of his life, and he notices that Christ has walked beside him the entire time. But then he looks and he says, Lord, why is it that during the most challenging times of my life, I see only one set of footprints? Where were you? And Christ looks at him and says, my beloved, lo, that is where I carried you. And so let's remember that the Guru never abandons us. In the Autobiography of a Yogi, one of the most thrilling parts is when Lahiri Mahashaya is reunited with Babaji, and Babaji gives this incredible explanation of the Guru's love for the disciple, that Babaji has kept Lahiri Mahashaya's utensils clean while his disciple was reincarnated. And I can't remember the exact words, but Babaji said, though you forgot me, lo, I have never lost sight of you, like Krishna's promise in the Bhagavad Gita. And so remember this, that the Guru will cross 1,000,000 crags of suffering for you, that he will come back for you with bleeding feet if necessary, so long as one stray brother is left behind. Thank you, my friends. Have a blessed day.